Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Zero Sum Game, the podcast where we interview e-commerce and social commerce operators, founders, business people, all that jazz. My name is Bora. I'm the co-host of the podcast, and I'm here with Sohan. I'm also the co-founder of Reacher, one of the top TikTok shop apps for creator collaborations at scale, where we use AI to help you with your marketing workflows and work with creators to sell products on TikTok shop. So as I mentioned, we're here with Sohan, the co-host of the podcast, where I'm actually interviewing him for the first time. He has interviewed myself and Jerry previously, as well as Jerry individually, and he's going to interview me after this. But I just wanted to get into your background, as you have a very unique skill set. You've done a lot of things. You've done sales, marketing, product, tons of stuff, right? So I want to kind of understand where you started. I think you started as a door-to-door salesperson, right?
Yes.
Honing those skills, right? Can you tell me about that role and how you came about becoming a door-to-door salesperson?
So door-to-door sales was like my first quote unquote business job, right? Previously I'd coached tennis for about 8 years or so, right? So that was my first job. And then door-to-door sales, I was trying to break into business and I had all this tennis background, but I was like, how does this equate to me getting hired at an investment bank or a management consulting firm? And I was like, there's no like hard skill translation there. But for door-to-door sales, I was like, this is a low barrier for entry. I'm pretty sure it's like the interview process is just a formality. It's can you survive in door-to-door sales, right? And my uncle, he was a pharmaceutical sales rep and a marketing director for about 20 years total for both of them, right? And so he was highly encouraging me to do door-to-door sales just because the sheer volume of how much you learn on the fly, the difficulty of the workload, it's a high pressure environment where you can learn a ton and there's almost zero barrier to getting in. So I started my first door-to-door sales job at a company called Insight Pest Control. Well, we were selling Insight Pest Control. The company is called Vantage Marketing. Both of those companies were owned by the same CEO, Josh Campos, who was a Jack Mormon.
Okay.
And so he was like a triple CEO. He owned Vantage Marketing, Insight Pest Control, and he owned a consulting company to go into businesses and help train other professionals on how to do their job, right? So he was almost like a full vertical stack owner of like the end-to-end marketing and sales process, from the marketers to the products that the marketers would sell. Great salesman, had an opportunity to shadow him for a day, learn about leadership and sales and everything while I was in Indiana. So yeah, that's where I started. I was working out of Indiana. I was peddling pest control for about 6 days a week, 11 hours a day. In the summer, it was quite brutal. Also being a darker person in Indiana, there's pros and cons to that. But really, that was actually the only formal sales training I've ever had in my career.
Do you have any stories or any learnings you had from that summer selling in Indiana?
Totally, yeah. I think with B2B sales, it's a lot easier than B2C sales, right? One, dealing with a business owner who it's very professional. It's like, I'm booking a call in your calendar so I can learn more, and we're dealing with high-class AI solutions versus me coming up to a random person's door and being like, hey, I saw ants outside. Or like, by the way, come walk with me. And you start walking them around your house. So there's this thing in sales where it's like, you start disarming the person as soon as you get there. You get in, you start from 10 feet away, you knock on the door, you pretend like you're busy. There's this phenomenon where you like welcome them to step into your office. So you show up to their door and you never say the first word. You make them say the first word. That gauges their tone. And you put them into this personality bucket. It's like owl, tiger, lamb, and like wolf or something like that, right? And so if it's like a lamb, that's like an old lady where she's like, hey, what are you doing there? And you're like, oh, hey there, ma'am.
Yeah.
Just stopping by. I was working with Mary there. I'm not sure. Have you come in? And you start walking them around the house. And so what is really funny is that in sales, if you are like really sure and can configure the way you sell or speaking to the person you're selling to, you can actually get them to follow you outside of their house. And then sometimes what we would do is, just to get people agreeing with us, we would have them do what they say. So I would be walking people around their house.
Wow.
They would walk with me while I'd show them the bugs in their garden and the damage they do and all the other things like that. So there's like fun stories like that, where, you actually see the power of these like sales techniques they're teaching you. And then there are other stories where you're selling someone and then a gun slips through their pocket, slides across the floor, and you have to pick up a revolver and be like, so by the way, I'm not sure you heard there's answer coming.
Yeah.
And some stories like that. So it really goes either way.
So is that like a tiger or an owl situation or a bear?
That's a run situation.
That's a run.
If someone's handing you their gun and they're like, so by the way, cleaning the gun, like, what do you do? It's like, sometimes I would try to pitch them.
Right.
Also, I'm just like, is it worth pitching them?
Yeah. Does it reasonably make sense to pitch this person right now?
Exactly. But most people in the Midwest have a gun.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, probably not. Yeah. I'm curious, did this sales experience, so you didn't have any sales experience before that, right? It was just
No,
this
I was
job?
a sophomore in college, actually.
Were you studying like business or sales or anything?
My first 2 years in college, I actually went to college to be a brain surgeon.
Wow.
And then I went to a school called Brandeis because it had a super high pre-med acceptance rate. And I was like, if I want to be a brain surgeon, I'm going to go here. And I did decently well on my AP Bio test. I got like a 4 out of 5.
That's pretty good.
And AP Bio was pretty hard.
Me too. I took AP Bio. It was hard. Yeah.
It's hard, and I was proud of it. And I was like super interested in cancer biology and nanotechnology when I was a kid. And I was like, oh, this is insane. Like, what if we built these little robots that could go and clean up rivers or go in and destroy parasites and people's, like, there was so much coolness to like that technology. And then I got in and I was like, actually, I don't want to be in school for 10 years. I want to go and get stuff done. And then I decided to be a lawyer, go and study philosophy and global studies. And then I was like, I don't like writing 30-page briefs. Like, this isn't fun. I know you can get paid a lot doing that, but I want to do something where I'm being excited. I'm making a lot of money. I'm getting feedback. And, my dad was like, you should try business. And everyone was telling me like, oh, you'd be good at sales. You'd be good at business. Like, go try it. And eventually sophomore year, I took a chance, decided to take a business course and had a professor that invested in me early on. And from there, it was an easy decision to continue there.
Got it. So you're essentially on the traditional immigrant parent-child path with the doctor and the lawyer.
Totally.
And then, But then your dad said, go do sales.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious, that summer selling pest control and doing the walk around the house and all that, it sounds like you learned a lot. Like, I actually didn't even know about that, putting them into 4 different buckets and the stepping 10 feet away. Do you think all of that in-person sales experience translated into B2B sales, which you started doing later on in your career?
Oh yeah, like B2B sales is like so much easier. So when I was in college, before I actually got into the program, they put you through all this training, right? And I don't even think they were paying me for all the training I was doing, right? But they shipped me a 115-page PDF.
Wow.
Of sales tactics, product info, different frameworks for different personality types, different seasonal problems that people would have. It taught us about ACV and how to sell different ACV length contracts based off of, like, it was an insane playbook.
Did you read it all?
I read almost all of it. I read like 80 pages of it, and I would practice, and I would get on calls with my manager and I would pitch to him. He'd give me feedback. I'd record myself on a phone practicing. And I feel like that's really all I needed. I think, in door-to-door sales, it's a lot more extreme. You have probably a few seconds before someone's like, I'm going to call the police, I'm going to shoot you, or I'm going to actually listen to like what you want to say. And honing those sales tactics in that environment over and over and over again for dozens of hours, like, was all I really needed to frame a conversation, anchor it in a way where people would listen, and ultimately provide them value to solve their problems.
Got it. So after that first sales job, let's go after college, right?
Sure.
Your first job after college, was it also sales? Like, did you also do sales?
So I didn't pursue sales because I also felt the stigma about being branded as a salesperson. And I also and this was partly some of the immigrant, upbringing and stuff, but I wanted to have a job that sounded more white collar, sounded nicer. I think one of my friends, he was actually making like hundreds of thousands of dollars selling pest control and solar. And I saw the money, I saw the potential, but I'm like, it didn't give me the intellectual stimulation I needed either. It was really just convincing people to buy stuff, which is like, at the end of the day, it's all about volume and repetition, and there's instinct, right? But it didn't stimulate me the same way as like solving a very complex marketing problem about how to bring a product to market and make it make millions, or figuring out, hey, our campaigns are losing trajectory 30% month over month, like helped me rebuild and, create a new campaign for meta ads. Those things weren't happening. So I pivoted towards digital marketing and e-commerce in junior year. Started my first job as a media buyer when the pandemic hit. And then from there, I actually went into media buying and operations for my first couple years of digital marketing and out of college.
Interesting. So you were doing sales, but because it wasn't kind of feeding that hunger, that intellectual hunger that you had,
Yep.
which I understand. Like I did sales too, and it's like kind of you just learn the playbook, and it's the same thing over and over again, essentially. You decided to go for marketing instead.
Yep.
So how did you make that jump? Because did you just go like get a marketing job, or like you were doing sales? Like what is the bridge there?
I think they're largely the same thing. I think
Really?
sales is just talking to someone one-on-one. I think marketing is just selling more people at once.
But
I
then
think
wouldn't you have that same gap of intellectual stimulation if it's the same thing?
Well, I think there's more complexity when you add in numbers, when you add in different mediums, when you're not talking face to face, right? For example, there's a whole different suite of marketing levers you can pull. There's like meta ads, there's email marketing, there's SMS, there's TikTok shop, there's marketplaces, right? With different buyer behaviors, different tool stacks, different ways to get to the same solution. And I think from there, you're getting into systems thinking, levers, efficiency. Those kinds of things aren't natural in the sales process. In the sales process, it's just, let the prospect talk, the prospects write, and then ultimately help them feel good to solve their problems. It's a little bit more like nebulous. It's a little bit more abstract. It's not as concrete and data driven in a lot of ways.
I see. Okay, that actually makes sense. So then your first marketing role, how did you go about getting it? Like, did you practice? Did you do some things on your own? Or?
I actually got nepoed in.
Oh, really?
I got nepoed in. My dad's family friend, Brent Freeman. He was the person who I interviewed on the 6-hour podcast recently.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's a
crazy
serial entrepreneur. He's had, I think, 20 businesses. A lot failed, a lot succeeded. And he actually exited his first business at 23 years old, I believe, for like 8 figures.
Insane.
So he's just like absolutely amazing. And he was, convincing me to join in what's called their founder lab. And they had 3 different arms, right? Founder lab was one where you take an idea that someone has and you help the founder find product market fit. And I was like, this sounds interesting, but I want to gain skills that help me find another job after, right? So I joined this growth lab. And that's where you take ideas that have product market fit and scale it up. Doing things like media buying, UGC, promotional strategy, and things like that. So I started my first internship as a junior media buyer, or I guess technically I was a performance media analyst. I'd put together reports and I would sort of work hand in hand to support the media buyers in their day-to-day presentation of what they were doing to help their clients grow.
I see. So you decided to take the growth path instead of the, I guess, founding path, it seems like, right? From the Brett Freeman thing?
Yeah.
I'm curious, like knowing you myself and knowing that you want to start your own company eventually, right? Or do your own thing or something. Why did you choose the growth path at the time over the founding path?
Yeah, I think back then I was also like 20 years old. Like I didn't really like understand I couldn't even visualize the scale, the jobs to be done. Like I didn't even understand what it would take to be a business owner. I did know that like I wanted to have my own empire and make a lot of money and, as every 20-year-old wants to do in college, right? But I didn't really understand, like I didn't know what I didn't know in between there, right? And I was like, how do I get short-term earnings and maximize my earning potential right out of college? And I was like, these hard skills will be more attractive to management consulting companies was really the main reason I made that decision to go there.
Okay. No, that makes sense. I mean, as you said, most 20-year-olds are going to just go like, how can I make money as soon as possible?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Interesting. So how long did you take that path for where you felt like you were trained up enough to go and not be a junior title anymore, an associate title?
Yeah, I think the title part is interesting because objectively, my title and my years of experience doesn't really add up to what I'm actually doing at Reacher. I think, so I was a junior media buyer and then I just showed a lot of curiosity and initiative. I was reading about meta ads all the time and eventually my boss, who I still keep in contact to, Alex Sandoval, by the way, he let me create a Halloween campaign for a super big client. And I created these interests, which is probably like not best practices for meta ads at the time, but I created this like super refined, broad interest group for Halloween, where I was like targeting all these kinds of Halloween interests with like a broad meta ad. And then we were doing like a lookalike of like the evergreen campaigns, which basically on Meta, you can create a campaign and do broad, which means you target a lot of people. And then you can create what's called a lookalike audience, where Facebook finds a group of people who are similar characteristics or attributes to the audience that is converting or working well, and then target them. And there's certain percentages. So you can go by 1% lookalike, which is very similar, 2%, 3%. And the higher up you go, the farther it is. So I created this lookalike audience with similar interests based off of a Halloween campaign. And that was my first time getting into, I guess, what I called strategic or more tactical marketing, where I actually created and owned something that created an impact. And then they extended my contract through Black Friday, Cyber Monday, because I really wanted to see how marketing did. Yeah. And then after that, I was like, oh my God, like COVID's happening. All the e-commerce stores are like 4xing in revenue. Everyone's going digital. Like I'm just going to, go ride this wave. And then I went and I took courses on Coursera for digital marketing. I went and took Google Ads certifications online for free, and then took those tests. And then I easy applied to about 500, 600 jobs. And while I was doing those courses, and then I landed at a company called Vendo, where I showed them like, hey, I created this interest group in Meta campaign that had a 400% return on their campaign spend. And then they flagged that, their HR flagged that. And then I did an interview with them, and then I started there, and then I expanded to Google Ads. So it was really taking an interest and a passion and expanding the scope. And I continuously expanded the scope until I started taking on my own little project. I'm not sure you're familiar with, but in Vendo, I was running a project where I was building a UGC vertical. I don't know if you remember that exactly.
I don't think so.
Yeah. So my first project, this was my first instance of intrapreneurship after that media buying campaign, right? So I was creating a UGC vertical, and this was before there was 20 different creator marketplaces, right? This was back when there was only 3,
right?
And so I was familiar with the early creator marketplaces, which were like Billo and Join Brands. Those are the main 2 I was working with, right? And I was like, how do we scope out a package where we can get influencer generated content to then go into our paid search and social department for them to create more revenue.
Right.
So it was like a supporting department. So our SVP or VP of marketing, Nicholas Martinez at the time, was like, hey guys, UGC is the future. I want this to be done at Vendo for our yearly goal. Like this department needs to happen. And then they were like, there's a college student who's probably scrolls a lot on Instagram and looks at a lot of creators. Let's just hand it to him and see what he can do. And at that time I was experimenting with things and pushing the boundaries on media buying using ChatGPT to help come up with keywords for Google Ads and improve efficiency there. And they were like, okay, let's have him try it out. And I wrote my first SOP when I was 22 for UGC.
Oh no, the SOPs.
And then from there, it was like, they just let me run it. Like Nick, he didn't even know that I was on his team. So I didn't have any manager who would oversee and give me direction on UGC. I was reporting to the director of operations, Theron, at the time, because they were like, oh, he likes systems and SOPs and data, so he can do operation. And so I went, and the media buyers were like, hey, we want to pitch clients UGC, come prepared with a presentation. And I pitched my first clients coming out of college for UGC within Vendo, and I started signing a few. And then within a couple months, I'd helped scale it from about like $0 to like $8,000 or $10,000. And then Darren, their CEO, was like, hey, pivot to the marketing side. Let's actually turn this into your hybrid role here. So that's my first instance of like scope expansion and going out of like the junior title there.
Yeah. Wow. So it seems like you got into Vendo after your initial time at, what was the first company?
Stealth Venture Labs,
right? Where you learned all the like initial marketing, and you said you had this like curiosity. Not to go back too far, I was just curious about this one point. You said they noticed that you were like very driven, and they like send your contract, and you're doing all this work. Did you have any upside with that contract role, or like why were you so like driven and curious to grow?
Yeah, I think it was because I mean, I think, you know, the upside for an intern like doesn't really like fully exist at that time, right? It's not like not like now where it's like I'm vested in as like a proper partner in the company where I get company-wide benefits if like I help drive the company to achieve these outcomes. I think at an intern level, you're too small, so I didn't get that upside besides maybe like $20 an hour. You know, so I was like, oh, I get a little more pay. Like that was my upside, you know, getting more pay in college so I could Uber Eats, you know, pizza instead of eating the crappy dorm food. I think seeing the work that I was doing and being able to make an impact on the biggest marketing season in the year and adding that to my resume, I think that was really the biggest upside for me. Is like, if I can create proof on my resume that what I actually did at this internship mattered. Yeah.
Okay, got it. And that obviously compounded into at Vendo Commerce, you had that same energy, that same building of proof that you can drive results. And then Darren and Nicholas, they realized like, hey, this college kid is like doing numbers. Let's like, they just threw you into UGC. Yeah,
they threw me in.
Okay. And then I'm assuming that translated into TikTok shop somehow, because then you were heading their, or were you heading their TikTok shop?
Yeah, I was heading their TikTok shop. Delaney was officially heading it up and I was supporting her on the affiliate side. So when I was doing UGC, right, it was making like 10, 15K a month. Like that's kind of where it was tapering off at like the MRR. And then Nick was also, you know, big visionary, was like, I also want to have an Amazon influencer marketing department. So we maybe do both of those things at the same time. And Amazon influencer marketing was something that Vendo has a history of doing more and more, but I helped bring it into I helped bring it beyond the idea into something scalable. I wrote out the SOPs, I worked with other marketing teammates, and we ran it for some pretty big brand names and generated our first case studies for influencer marketing. So I did influencer marketing and Amazon, which by the way is marketplace influencer marketing, which is different than driving an influencer to purchase on your website, right? So there's similar nuances with TikTok Shop. And then I also worked with creators to help build creative assets for ad campaigns, which we all know is how GMV Max works, right? Which is like, we need to brief creators to build high performing assets for paid ads. So both of those things, they were like, well, there's only one person in the company who actually works with creators and does this. And Nick was the SVP of marketing for Vendo, and he was doing it like he just couldn't do it all. Like he can't be an account manager. Delaney was the head of accounts for all of Amazon, which is Vendo's primary bread and butter. So they were like, okay, Sohan, you're going to do UGC, influencer marketing, and TikTok shop all at the same time. So I had like 40 clients in my book of business or something like that. And I was doing all these projects at once, and I failed a lot in the early days, but helped, start up their TikTok shop from there.
Wow. I mean, what was your like response to getting all of this stuff thrown at you? Like, were you given more upside then, or, you know, was it just like, hey, son, just do it? And what was your reaction to that?
Yeah, I would say Darren was very, very generous with the compensation he gave me. I think he takes care of top talent at Vendo, and he gave me pretty substantial raises. And so I did get compensated in that amount. I think the biggest thing I was told was compensated with learning. I think, you know,
you were told that?
That's pretty, it's pretty classic for junior talent is to be compensated with learning. And I think everything I learned at Vendo has compounded me in a way where now I'm helping agencies revisit their SOWs. And, you know, there were things at Vendo where I probably shouldn't have been poking my head into the finances. I probably shouldn't have been talking to the BD teams about sales quotas and how to bring clients in, how to negotiate, how the marketing SOWs communicated to clients, and then how it actually looks like in delivery downstream. And if that's like there was a lot of learning that I got at 22, 23 years old that really makes a difference in how I am today. And I think that was more valuable than getting an additional like $10,000 or $20,000 there.
And again, that's a theme with you. Like you're always like putting your head into places where you're like, is someone supposed to be like here or not? Like, is that you taking very literally what Darren says? Is like, oh, you're compensated with learning and saying like, well, I'm going to compensate the hell out of it.
Yeah.
Or is it something else within you that causes you to do that?
I think for me, what I was taught early on in operations is that business is a system, and all these aspects or elements of the system are interrelated with each other. How sales is setting expectations with clients and the rates we're charging them are going to impact how open they are to additional add-ons from account managers or budgeting decisions. that lead to their profitability and revenue downstream, right? So if you're coming in as an account manager and you don't know how things are being sold, you don't understand the client temperament, you don't understand what they can be bought into or not, and then you don't understand how to actually deliver your recommendations in the right way. And then if you don't understand the financial impact of pitching these additional things or hiring other people, you can't communicate this information to upper management and stakeholders, where they have to make a business decision that has costs and trade-offs between other business decisions. So for me, fundamentally from day one, it didn't make sense to just be siloed into one role if I wanted to make a real impact in what I was doing.
It's very interesting because I think a majority of people, myself included, when I was working in corporate and as an intern and whatnot, I would just, and I think a majority of people are this way, where they are given their task and they just do their task and they very seldom go and look at other places and try to understand from a business standpoint how what I'm doing is affected by something upstream or downstream, right? So like, but you are obviously, why? Well, just why?
Yeah, I think part of it is, I'm very fortunate to have an uncle who would have lunch with me like every single Sunday. What he did when I was about, I think 11 years old, is he would treat me like an adult and we would discuss and argue like a lot about various different concepts, and we'd have a lot of intellectual debates. And like, he's like a 45-year-old with like a master's degree, 20 years of marketing director experience, genetics background, business epic. Like, he objectively is smarter than me, right? But he would treat me like an equal, and he would make me logically break out all my points. And, from 11 to like all the way to where I am now,
a lot.
we still, I know. And that's why he honed my ability for articulation, critical thinking, systems thinking. And I would call him up and I'd be like, hey, like, why is this, like, I'm so frustrated with Vendo, like they're making me do this. And he's like, no, like you did this wrong and you should have communicated like this to Delaney instead of like that. And you need to realize that this is why, as business owners, they're telling you to do this. And so every time I would run into a point of friction or a problem, I'd call him up and I'd be like, why is it done this way? Why that? Why this? And, from an early days, like he helped, uncover a lot of like ignorance that I had around how business operates. I think Alex Hormozy says like the Dunning-Kruger effect, right?
Yeah, right.
Where it's like, when someone's really, really young, the most annoying thing is like, they just keep questioning you and they think they know so much, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, I experienced the Dunning-Kruger effect so much when I was earlier, but I had my uncle and I had other mentors from my dad's friends network who would just kind of take me on and they'd be like, hey, like, let me tell you why things are done this way. And I would listen and I would take huge action on the advice they gave, and that would only make them want to mentor me more.
I see. Do you think that this method of, I guess, working and existing in the business world is good for the company, whatever company you're with? And do you think that more people should be this way? Or do you think the status quo of the general population is required for, companies to exist and succeed?
I think it depends on the role you're hiring for. I think it also depends on how the person is wired. I think I've always been someone who's very obsessive and very curious. So when I get curious about something, I get obsessively curious about it. And I will just keep, like, I'll do like the 5 whys. I'm like, why? Okay, why? Okay, why? Okay, why? Like, I want to understand how everything works around me and why it is the way it is. So I understand the rules and guardrails in which I can play around and make the outcome I want. I think a lot of people don't care about that. I don't think like it makes sense for everyone to do that. I think if you had 6 Sohans in the company telling you, hey, like this, that, I think you'd probably go insane. And even Jerry would probably just be like, I want to make half the Sohans leave. So I don't think everyone should be like that.
I think, it's definitely something that like your personality type is one that I don't come across often. And I don't think many people know how to handle properly. I'm curious, like, how do you see yourself working with people in practice at like companies, and how do you think like people can work with a personality type like yourself who's just constantly questioning and like trying to understand what's going on?
I think it's like very tough. Like I will say like what Nick did a really good job with, because I think he was like the first manager for my first job who really like, took to heart, and he gave me a dangerous, looking back, he gave me an insane amount of autonomy for a 22-year-old coming in. Like, he gave me Vendo's biggest client that they were bringing on and was like, hey, you've made a couple thousand with UGC.
Right.
Go and script out and schedule out 300 videos across their 3 brands for highly sensitive, highly regulated category, and deal with their lawyers, deal with their head of brands, deal with their VPs on email threads, and bargain back and forth for usage rights, for multiple revisions with creators. And this was early days in Vendo, and he was pretty much like, you know, he of course, like, he didn't just like throw me to the wolves, but he gave me an insane amount of autonomy to, you know, do my work. And, you know, from there, like, I took that with a lot of respect. I think every weekend I was like, okay, like, how do I read a book on strategic project management over the weekend. And then I'd be like, hey, ChatGPT, I'm writing a UGC project with 30 videos this month for this brand. And you script it like this, like, apply the principles from this chapter. I take the PDF and I'd put it in there, and then I apply it to my marketing use case. And then I would just keep learning like that, like, every single weekend. And I love when people give me a ton of autonomy and an ability to take action. I think, unfortunately, like, it's very hard, and I understand why, where most people don't trust someone who's coming out of college or who's newer in their career to have such a sizable business impact and autonomy in the work that they're doing. It's tough. Like, you have to trust that person, and the fate of a really big project, you know, lands in their hand, and there's not much evidence or leading indicators besides behavior, values, traits, to trust them with that project.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's not many people like yourself that I've come across, right? That take that autonomy and do more work with autonomy. Yeah. Usually when you give someone autonomy, and I guess I want to ask you like what autonomy means to you, but from like my definition of autonomy, which is like you can just, someone's not micromanaging you and you kind of do whatever you want, right? Yeah. When I've seen people have autonomy in the workplace, the majority of the time they're not doing more work. They're not like, let me go read a book over the weekend and figure that stuff out. So like, I guess, what does autonomy mean to you?
Yeah, so I think autonomy represents my range and ability to take action, move freely. I think for me, I don't like being handcuffed and told how to do something. I like it when people just give me a problem and give me a little budget and they're like, hey, go solve this problem. Yeah. Right. And so for me, you can give me a goal. You can be like, hey, by the way, you can't curse in a podcast, you know, like you can give me guardrails like that. Yeah. But in terms of like how to conduct the podcast, how to do the intro, who to interview, what the actual process looks like, what the editing and intake process looks like for guests into some sort of spreadsheet or portal, like I don't need to be told those specifics, and I don't want to be told how to get to the goal.
I see. Having worked with you myself for, you know, decent amount of time now, like 6 months now? Yeah. 6 months now? You get going up on 1 year. I think it's interesting that you say that, because you say you don't like being told how to do X, Y, or Z, like run a podcast and intro and stuff like that. But we do have those conversations where you and I are discussing how we should do exactly those things actually. And we're going back and forth on like how you think we should do it and how I think we should do it. And then like sometimes what I say goes and sometimes what you say goes. So like, what isn't that kind of going against the whole like don't tell me how I should do this idea?
I think speaking to you and I's relationship, one thing you do is you try to like ask for my opinion first, and you also gave me very early ownership of like sales and marketing. I think it's like very segmented, right? I think I partially earned that through consulting and early indicators, right? Trust was built. I don't think you're like, hey, by the way, like I created a sales script. Can you go run this with the sales reps? Like, I don't think you've ever really done that. But if you're just like, hey, we need to hire salespeople versus we don't, like, you know, I understand that like it's not my company and like I didn't put hundreds of thousands of dollars to get it to where it is today. And even if it comes down to like, if I think my decision's right against yours, like you have a right to make the decision on the company, even if I think it's wrong. You know what I mean? And like, you know, that's something that, you know, was hard for me to accept in the earlier days when I was more junior, because I didn't understand what senior stakeholders were carrying. I didn't understand the deficit in business acumen, you know, between my manager's leadership versus me, who read things out of a textbook or read a book on the weekend about ChatGPT and felt like I had the right, you know, to disagree there. So I think to your point, like I'm fundamentally bought in and okay with you making the final decision, given the amount of autonomy and how much you hear me out.
I see. Well, speaking of autonomy, it sounds like you're given a lot of autonomy at Vendo. And you were kind of forcefully given autonomy over like UGC and Amazon influencers and all that. Now, obviously, we've been in TikTok Shop for the past, like, I think 2 years now.
Yeah.
Both you and I. I know Vendo Commerce has a TikTok Shop organization. So on top of the first 3 things that you were doing there, did they also throw on TikTok Shop to you? How did you get into the TikTok Shop side of the house?
Yeah, so they threw on TikTok Shop because the CEO, like, again, Darren, super smart, crazy future vision, right? Was like TikTok Shop's going to be the future. Like, it was a meeting with me, Delaney, Nick, and Darren. I don't know. I guess I was on the meeting.
Yeah,
it was like 2 of the most senior people in Vendo, and I was there. You know, UGC, what is it, like marketing associate or something like that? SVP,
The CEO, the SVP.
Yeah, and then the VP of account. Yeah, it's just kind of weird. And then he was like, guys, like, we're gonna make TikTok Shop work. Like, here's how we're gonna get to like 40 accounts or something like that, right? And I was on that meeting, and Darren was making it an objective, and then they were figuring out who's gonna run it. And I think, you know, I was really the supporting role, and like, I'll be the account manager. Like, I'll make it happen. I'll help manage the clients. I'll help write out the early SOPs. Like, if we need to hire virtual assistants or other coordinators, like, you know, I'd be responsible for scoping it out, understand the jobs to be done, helping Nick write out the financial forecast, right? Because that's what I did for influencer marketing. While I was going into TikTok Shop, I scoped out all the jobs to be done, the hourly estimates. For some reason, I had access into some of the finances. So I looked at utilization rate. I looked at the number of billable hours and the opportunity costs of doing this part of the scope versus the other part of the scope. And I did that and slowly delegated influencer and UGC to another part of the org and helped hire in new people. And then I pivoted to TikTok Shop there.
I see. So you delegated your past influencer stuff off. Okay.
I couldn't do them all 3 at once.
Yeah, that's what I was
too much. Yeah.
I was going to ask, like, how are you doing all 4 things now? Or? I see. So TikTok Shop. So you essentially, it sounds like you were the person who built up TikTok Shop from the ground up, essentially. Right?
Yeah, I did it with Delaney. So Delaney was writing early SOPs. She really led the charge on. Darren was telling her, like, hey, TikTok Shop needs to be built. She wrote the early SOPs. She got some of our additional clients. And then really when it came to creating all the influencer affiliate strategy and SOPs there and, you know, driving some more of the revenue generating strategies, that's where I came in and stepped in. But, you know, she made the early hires. She scoped out all the shop operations, the policy, the setup. There's a lot of things that, like, I just didn't have insight into and definitely couldn't have done without her. But then I was helping figure out our influencer affiliate roadmap, having conversations with you and, you know, other competitors on, you know, which tools we're going to use and doing our due diligence there, putting our TikTok Shop strategies for clients and pivoting them like every week, you know?
Yeah. So how were the early days of, because you started that in 2020, early 2024, right?
Yeah.
Is that when you guys did?
The early days, I just did the wrong strategy. I was like, oh, we had this client. I messed them up. It was like, it was, and I just absolutely did not do their account. I mean, it was my first TikTok Shop client ever. I had no TikTok manager who told me like how to do it. And I would DM all the highest influencers, highest GMV creators on TikTok Shop with a target collab
ever.
one by one. And then I'd be like, hey guys, like here's 15% commission. And then like no one would respond. And then we kept increasing commission up and no one would respond. And then it was months and they were just kind of like, okay. And we kept levering discounts and high commission and nothing worked. And I was just like, and then was like, okay, we're going to go find someone else who did better. And then they went to another agency and then now they're absolutely massive.
Yeah, huge.
So that was my early days in TikTok Shop. I mean, learned a lot from those failures as well.
Yeah. So did you have any success stories or is that just like...
I did, but I can't necessarily like speak to the clients that are still with Vendo and, you know, there's some anonymity there.
Gotcha.
You know,
it's a tongue twister. Yeah. Okay, I see. Then we can go past that if you can't go into too much detail for Vendo clients. I'm curious, did you start using, so obviously you came from our competitor company, right? We will call them Pear, the Pear company.
Yeah,
right?
I came from a Pear company.
Came from Pear. Did you use this company at Vendo before deciding to go work for them?
Yeah, so we were actually their customer. And so I took them out for dinner.
You took them out for dinner?
I took them out for dinner because we're going to have a webinar together. I took Pear out for dinner.
Wow.
And then, cause I was like, really interested in AI, and I was getting really frustrated with marketing. And like, this was one of the things where it's like, whenever I had to execute a marketing campaign, I had to figure out hacks on how to get to more revenue because the technology and the workflows didn't make sense. They're like, how do you find this gap in the algorithm and find some sort of arbitrage, which is basically like oversight from the algorithm where you can just fake ranking and increase your place in the marketplace like cost effectively, you know, and like you just go find areas of arbitrage like all the time and hack your way through to marketing. And I was getting so frustrated. And I'm like, wait, there's software, there's product out there where it's like, you know, we use product to drive all of our marketing forward. We're entering a technology-driven product era. Like these influencer marketing products pretty much streamlined all of our influencer marketing programs. The Aspires, the Upluents, Tribe IQ, you know, Creator IQ, Tribe Dynamics, and like all these guys, they were like we used them as the baseline for our marketing program. And I'm like, they're effectively enabling all of our influencer marketing. Yeah. And if I didn't use them, I'd have to like hack my way through and find influencers. And I'm like, I find that to be very like depressing. And so I wanted to talk to Pear and I wanted to talk to their founders. And I was like, how do you guys do product management? How do you do discovery? Like, how are you figuring out these solutions and building them for these marketers, especially not being the marketers yourself, right? And figuring out that there are these blocks. So I took them out for dinner. We're going to have a webinar before, and they were at a stage where they were hitting their like 6-figure ARR, you know, and they were like, how are we going to get someone to sell the product? Cause they're both like technical backgrounds. Like they weren't that great at sales. I went and I audited the CEO's demo call, you know, and I just was like, here, you know, just ripped him apart. And he's like, okay, you're like, we'll make you an offer.
Really? So you took the feedback well.
He took the feedback and it was like, okay, do you have official sales background? And I'm like, I've sold some stuff at Vendo too. You know?
That's some pest control.
I did sell Vendo contracts.
Okay.
I did jump on. Yeah. So I've sold some high ACV things, and you know, I sold like pretty sizable contracts there as well. So I didn't stop, and I sold B2B and audited sales call. And from there, it was like selling TikTok Shop. You know, no one really knew much about TikTok Shop, so I could also sell from a consultative side. So that's how I got in there. Yeah.
Got it. So you started utilizing the software for Vendo clients, and then it sounds like you were doing the work at Vendo, but you were just like, hey, if we're using these kinds of tools to do a majority of the work, and I'm just like doing the arbitrage, like boring stuff over and over, why don't I just go work and help grow these tools that essentially seem like they can do a majority of the work that I am doing as a human.
Yeah, like why can't I impact 1,000 clients to grow revenue on TikTok Shop instead of manage a book of 15 at Vendo through arbitrage and like using a tool? Yeah.
So then that seems like a shift from like marketing. I guess you're gonna do sales for Pear, but it seems like a shift from like going into the marketing side of things and like the marketing background back to sales. What was your plan? Like, was your plan just to like grow the company like through selling, or like what was your like end goal of joining this Pear company?
Yeah, so the reason I wanted to join Pear was like breaking into product. I think it's very untraditional that a marketer gets a chance to come in and evangelize a product company in its early stages. Like now that I'm hiring early talent, I'm like, wait, would I make this hire? Yeah. You know what I mean? And I came in as their director of growth, right? At 23 years old, you know, I was like, oh, I got a great title. I am huge scope, right? And I came in and I just like doubled their ARR like over several months. And then ultimately like 10x their revenue in 10 months. Wow. Just through taking sales calls and creating educational content on TikTok Shop. And that wasn't my plan. Yeah. My plan was like, how do I even learn software? Like I was running into so many errors, and you know, one of the founders there, he was like the CTO, and he coached me a lot. Like he would just send me YouTube videos on product management. He would be like, hey, like go research how information is sent in packets across the internet to understand how to talk to engineers, like understand engineering empathy to communicate your ideas to the team. Like, you know, here's how you look at design. And he helped me talk to designers, and ultimately that evolved from me just being the sales and marketing guy to owning a part of the product at Pear, and owning
we'll bleep that out.
And owning a part of the product as well, and diving into product management. So it to answer your question, like no, it wasn't my plan, and I originally just started, you know, helping fill the gap that they had, which was sales and marketing.
So this follows a theme of Sohan, of like just being hungry and wanting to do more and more and more, right? You went from sales then you went to marketing, and then now you're going into product, or you
Yep.
went into product, right? Is that like, do you want to build product? Because I know you owned a product as like part of the product at Pear.
Yeah.
It's hard not saying the actual name. At Pear, you own a part of the product. Like, do you enjoy product? Do you enjoy marketing? Like, where do you see yourself going towards in that respect? Because like you said earlier, you don't actually like doing sales on a day-to-day basis, like actually selling over and over and over again, right? Although you did grow Pear by 2x or 10x through sales.
Yeah. So I just like business. I just love knowledge. I just love learning. I love business as a whole. I think every component is important. And, at first I didn't realize there were opportunities to do multiple things at once. I started at Vendo and they let me do all these things. And then I went into Pear and I can do all these things at once and hire people and manage them to do that while doing this and that at the same time. And I was like, whoa, like this it was a positive feedback loop where I was like super satiated. I was developing different product ideas for the roadmap, and then I was reviewing designs, and then I would go and sell those to I would go and sell those to high tier customers, and then train salespeople on my recordings with the script, and then I'd go delegate that, and then I'd focus on the top 10% of the shops on TikTok Shop, sell them, work with them, and then create new product ideas, and then use that as a marketing motion. And I was like, this feels like growth, this feels like business, and this feels right, and I just wanted to do like more of it. And that's really what I wanted to focus on, is just doing more of what I loved and creating the biggest impact possible for the company.
I see. So it sounds like you were getting everything you wanted from working at Pear. Why did you end up leaving? And I think you joined a brand after that?
Yeah. So, I mean, fundamentally, like I was helping generate a ton of revenue. I wasn't really getting compensated with any of the upside. And that was part of it, where it was like, of course, being younger, I didn't understand how comp packages were structured. I didn't understand what a leadership stake in the company meant. I had all these responsibilities and none of the reward for like the risks I was taking, right? I actually wasn't even officially head of sales. I didn't make any percentage on my reps commission. I hired them, I trained them, but they that wasn't recognized. And I didn't realize that until I started getting hit up for about a dozen head of social commerce roles, lots of product roles, for like head of growth in early stage companies in SF. And they were starting to offer me things like huge equity, upside based, like, things like this. And I'm like, whoa, this is what's out there. This is what I've been missing. This is like a multiple of what I was getting paid, and they'd let me consult on the side too. Yeah. And so I was getting to a point where like I was essentially undervalued in my comp package by about 2.5 to 3x. And I came in and I was at like a ridiculous equity portion. I was at like 0.1% with a 1-year cliff vested over like 4 years, which basically, for people watching, like if you have such a small equity share and a company decides to raise through multiple rounds, your equity gets diluted into a meaningless share. And the multiple on that is like, you'd have to get all the way to exit, get your equity out in the final round. And if they hit a 10x multiple, maybe you get like $500,000. That's like the best case scenario of taking like, what was like 50,000 in stock options, and taking that forward. And I was just like, wait, I can get I can get multiple percentages, right? And I'm like, that's the upside. That makes sense. I've been working like, 12 hours a day, slaving away. And I'm, no upside. So, once I realized that, I could get curiosity and upside, I just was like, I tried to have a conversation. Fundamentally, they didn't think I was that great at my role. And I think they really just weren't able to meet me to where I needed to be. And didn't see the value. So I ended up having to leave. Yeah.
I see. You naturally love to work. So it makes sense for you to have upside equivalent to the amount you love to work, right? It totally makes sense in terms of like equity and commission and things like that. But so I won't go too much into the details of Pear. I don't think you probably can talk too much about them knowing what's happened previously, but you ended up leaving Pear and joining. We tried to poach you from Pear. With myself and Jerry doing some like Silicon Valley, the show Silicon Valley Tactics, taking out to like food and like try to like some poker here and there, like some tactics. Didn't end up working. You did end up leaving Pear, which was good for us regardless, to a brand. Why did you decide to go for a TikTok shop brand, or to go to a brand side for a TikTok shop rather than like take one of these SF tech company growth packages that you're talking about?
I think at the time, like there was a lag. So like 1 week after I joined the brand side, I was getting these like SF tech offers, and like it was just pure compensation, dude. It was just like if I worked at a brand and I had an agreement where I could consult up to 3 tech companies on the side, the cumulative amount of the retainers plus the upside based off of a percentage of growth of TikTok Shop revenue plus the high base salary, it was me indexing too much importance on overall short-term comp, right?
Yeah.
Again, like I didn't have the equity that would have came with going to a tech company. And when I was making that decision, I was making it, again, back to my earlier mistakes as a junior in college, looking at short-term comp too much and not evaluating the learning and stuff. And I quickly realized after I joined a brand, there's nothing against people who work in brands. I think it's just the pace. People just don't work as much as a tech startup. It just doesn't move as fast. The scope is very limited. It just didn't hit the core buckets of what makes me feel whole, in business and satiate my curiosity as working at a startup.
I see. So the conversation was good, but the intellectual stimulation part of things wasn't really there.
I mean, there's a combination of like, your team, your founder, your scope, and your compensation. All those elements need to play a role when you're choosing where to work at. And fundamentally, I was indexing too much on comp.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense.
And so I made the switch later on.
To Reacher, obviously, to Reacher.
Yeah.
I mean, do you want to talk a little bit about like the journey to come over to us? Because, we had these, from our perspective, we were trying, we identified you while you were working at Pear. We're like, this guy, to your everything you said was just like killing it, doing, all this like go to market motions and like helping them with the product side as well. We just could tell that you were like a hard worker and just a go-getter. So we were already trying to poach you when you were at Pear, and then you left to the company, you started consulting with us before you eventually made the decision to come full time with us. What was like your mindset throughout that process? Like for me reaching out to you, like in your head, like, oh, this guy's texting me on WhatsApp, like what was going through your head?
So I don't even know if you guys know this actually. So
I don't think I do.
I had conversations with my uncle, which you guys probably knew I was having. But then I actually met with one of my dad's friends who was he's an owner of an investment group that invests in that helps people find 8-figure B2B SaaSes, and was investing in a very similar company to Reacher and was helping orchestrate an exit for them.
Wow.
Right. And I was asking him his opinion on brand versus software side. And I was like, I could connect you to this group of SaaS founders called Sassercise and SF who specifically help people scale from 7 to 8 figures. And he was going to help me at Pear, and he was going to give me all these resources and his network. And he was like, you need to stay in tech if you're in product, 10 years down the line, if you do a product manager stint and you help grow this company from 1 to 10, he's using the numbers like 1 to 10, 1 million to 10 million and doing a product manager stint. He's like, your upside increases tremendously, and then you can go become a partner at a VC firm, and you can do things like that long run. And NSF, like that's where you create real long-term wealth and money. And it's very hard to break into this scene, but it's very easy to break out to the brand side. And so I was evaluating the long-term earning potential where I'd see myself 10 years down the line, of course, talking to someone who's very in the field on the investor side of the ecosystem to get that alpha, because I wouldn't have known that. So there was a lot of decision-making points, and my uncle was saying like, you're built for tech, like you're built for sales. You're not built to be siloed into like one thing. And I tried the brand side because I wanted that short-term cash. And ultimately I was, willing to, give some of that up for a bit, to come over to the tech side and to satiate my curiosity, get some more like long-term loaded, wealth and a lot of learning. So that was really the decision-making process there.
Got it. I see. How were you feeling on a maybe personal level when I started reaching out about, potentially coming over from Pear to us, and then getting you to consult? Is, you talked to your uncle, right?
Yeah.
To your uncle, like what else was going through your head? Like, what were you thinking in terms of like our company and us as people, and other than like all the upside stuff you just mentioned?
Yeah, I'll speak to when I was at the brand side, because I think the consulting stuff, we didn't necessarily start until like after I had left Pear.
Yeah.
I think it was definitely like, at first I was a little on guard because you guys had some Silicon Valley tactics, so to speak. And I'm like, these guys could probably just screw me over as easily as they want to reward me. And so that's something that, I have to be on guard about. right? You know, like, oh, like I've been in a position where someone's promised me the world in equity and then just completely screwed me. I'm like, you know, if these guys are willing to do something like that, then maybe they're willing to also do something like that to me, right? You know? And so like that was part of the process I was thinking about. But then I was like, wait, but also that means they are willing to do whatever it takes to win. So if I'm properly incentivized and everything's good, then I should be rewarded in the long run. So that was a business acumen intuition bet I had to make. And I think going brand side, vetting the founders is also something that you need to do if you're a senior talent going in. And that's something that I learned through that brand side experience, was like trust my gut and make some, you know, risk-taking decisions there. And I think working with you guys in person in SF, you know, having fun ordering breakfast burritos in the office and, you know, spending time in SF and going out and playing poker together in the house you were renting. Right? I think those decisions really helped solidify my decision to join Reacher.
I see. Well, why don't you talk a little bit about like how it's been since you joined, how you've been feeling, what you've been doing and working on. Like, you know, we gave you the head of go-to-market title. So you've kind of been doing essentially everything as you've always been doing, you know?
Yeah.
Like interested in everything. So why don't you talk a little bit about that journey, how you've been feeling?
Yeah, so I remember during the negotiation process, you know, we were negotiating all kinds of things like titles and scopes. I think
single trigger, double trigger, like equity vesting.
Yeah, and we both had advisors who both knew like a lot more than us about equity clauses, and so we're both like Cold War through our advisors negotiating like equity clauses and everything like that. And I think also titles and scope. I think, you know, originally like you guys were thinking, oh, you're going to be specialists, and I was like, oh, like I'm actually probably going to be a generalist, you know, VP between like both you and Jerry for between a layer of the company, right? And I was like, I'm going to be here, and you guys need this, you guys don't need that, right? And I think you guys are like, you know, and then eventually you're like, okay, like actually maybe he's right, you know? So I think now that I've been here, I think more or less that's become true. I think, you know, title aside, I think I've been helping you and Jerry, you know, processize and readjust things as we're hitting new levels of scale at Reacher. I think since I've joined, we've about 3 to 4x the headcount, right? It was like about 4 to 5 employees, not counting the founders. To now about 20 plus, at 25 at its peak, and, you know, doing some restructuring and rehiring. And, you know, I think it's been interesting. You know, I've been involved in making a lot of these decisions around senior talent, much to, you know, your grace, right? You've been helping me, like letting me get involved in like the head of customer success hiring. You know, I've been involved in the senior product designer or head of product design hiring, you know, and helping figure out like where are the constraints in the business? Where do we need to get to? How can we unlock the next scale of growth? And I think that's been a really fun intellectual challenge for me to just tackle at Reacher. So I'm loving it, and I'm enjoying how we're growing.
I'm loving it. That's great. Trying to get like can we get sued for saying that? I don't think so, right? I'm curious. So all these jobs and these different roles you've been in for the past, what it was like 4 years? Has it been 4 years?
It's like 3.5, 4 years. Yeah.
3.5, 4 years. Okay. So you've 3.5, 4 years, you've been at like 3 to 4 different companies. I would say that's moving around more than most people, I would say.
Totally, yeah.
So I'm curious, like, why do you think you've moved around that much, and what is your like goal? You know, like, why do you move around so much, and what are you trying to achieve? Yeah,
I think you know, part of it for me is like coming out early in college. I don't think I was suited to be siloed into like a traditional junior role. I think I outgrew a lot of the roles I was in very, very quickly, and I had the hunger and passion to match it. And I think part of that was like part of it was just like actually learning about what's out there and just telling myself like, what if it could be better? Like always dreaming for more. Like maybe there's a little bit of greed, maybe there's a little bit of like dreamer mentality behind it. You know what I mean? Like there'd be rough times where like I'd take on so much more than I thought I could. I'd learn it, but then I'd just go on walks in the morning and I'd be like, you know, like this doesn't feel right. I'm not very excited. I'm not happy here. And people would tell me like, oh, but that's just working in a job. That's how it should feel. You know, but I'm like, what if it could be better? And, you know, I'd ask myself that, and I'd go on these walks and I'd think, and I'd be like, well, actually for reasons X, Y, and Z, like this doesn't make sense. You know, I don't need to be here anymore. And how can I get into a situation that I actually want to be in and I feel good in? And as I was growing insanely fast, I had to do a lot of self-introspection about what I needed to get to my next level? Like where should I fundamentally be at to match the pace of growth, and where I want to be as like a, I want to be like a C-level, operator, whatever that means, but like helping shape a business, vision, future, hiring, growth, like in every aspect, from the ground up. I want to understand everything. And is what I'm doing right now in this moment helping me achieve that goal faster or slower? I'd always ask myself and analyze that and understand, like, if I'm doing this right now, like, what does this mean for me in the day-to-day in the next, 5 to 10 years?
I say, do you think you couldn't have achieved what you just said by staying at any of those past roles?
I don't think so. No.
Why do you think not?
Well, I think if I was at Vendo, I would have never gotten into like software, right? I think I would have never owned the functions of multiple departments. I would have never experienced being like a multi-department owner, scaling and interviewing. And I think right now my responsibility doesn't match up with my cumulative years of experience. I'm essentially going over both your and Jerry's processes and looking at it and stripping it down and rebuilding it back up with you. That's like COO level work. I'm also on the call with our biggest clients negotiating legal documents and NDAs for Reacher. That's, not something that's typically delegated to someone. That's like partner level work, and I don't think there's any quicker way to get there other than like pivoting and changing into a role with the right founders and scope where they're enabling and supporting you to do that. I think there is a possibility that I could have gotten there, but it wouldn't have been as fast.
Like in order to, because it seems like when you are happy and fulfilled and intellectually stimulated and you're able to do business the way you want to do business, that you're happy and you'll stay there, right? If you ever feel that you are not being given the level of autonomy that you want in order to do the things that you want or that you think are right to do at a business, do you prefer to just try and go to like somewhere else where you will be able to be given that autonomy? Or would you rather discuss with the people that you're with, like the founders, really, like Jerry and I for this case?
Yeah. I mean, I think everything has been a discussion with my previous managers. I'm very confrontational and I'll always say what's on my mind. I'm not typically someone who quiet quits or doesn't speak what's on their mind, as you guys very well know. And, ultimately like, those decisions, more in the past, like were, I was very confrontational about it, probably in a way that didn't represent a high degree of business acumen. But recently, I think, I believe like a lot of it comes down to like founder personality and people's propensity for change. And if they can actually take a certain degree of action to get to where you want to be. I think asking someone to do something that's completely out of the range of like who they are and what they'd want to do, like it doesn't make sense for me to sit down and discuss and debate someone on that. But if there's like minor changes where like we can work together and get to a place where we're both happy and, getting what we need and getting our needs met in our work, I think that's a discussion 100% worth having. What
advice would you have? What would you recommend for people that are like yourself? I haven't met many people like yourself in terms of like the drive that you have and just that like insane interest in business and wanting to do everything as like basically what a founder wants to do, right?
Yeah.
Essentially. What do you recommend or what kind of advice do you have for people that are like yourself that are not founders, but working very closely with founders as if they are a founder in order to kind of move themselves along and provide value and also stay happy at the same time and maintain those relationships with founders? There's a lot to unpack.
So speaking to where I'm currently at in my career, acting as that level between you and Jerry, how to keep going at that rate and what to do at that stage? Or are you talking about before when you're just starting to get into a startup and given high autonomy?
It's a good question. I would say let's do both because I think you came to this level because I don't think you had this level at Pair before, right? It's kind of like the first time, right?
I don't even think I had this level at Reacher 3 months ago.
Okay. Yeah. So like how did you get into this position in your own words, I guess, or how do you think you got into this position?
Yeah.
And then how do you think you're maintaining it, like maintaining the relationship within yourself and with us as well?
Yeah. So I think the first thing you have to do, and I'll speak to like the early like startup, getting more responsibility and getting what you want. I think the first thing I do, and I've spoken to students at UC Berkeley, I've spoken to a lot of college kids about this, is you have to swallow the frog. You have to do the job that your manager absolutely hates doing. And you have to do that without complaining at all and asking any questions or like anything. If you can just get a seat at the table by doing the task no one wants to do, again, there's a low barrier of entry because no one wants to do it. They will hand it off to you and give you autonomy to do it. You know what I mean? If you can swallow the frog and do that task really well and showcase results, that becomes your proof. And you earn the respect for your opinion. You earn a seat at the table. And then you come to the table and be like, hey, by the way, I want to replicate what I've done here for something kind of related or something similar, or I have this passion and interest. Can I replicate what's worked here and do that there? And then it becomes a compounding effect of you taking on responsibility, showcasing your results, and then getting to that next level. And if you keep showcasing results, have a high propensity for action, and do the things no one wants to do, you'll eventually accumulate a really big scope and track record of results where people are like, hey, I can't really argue and say Sohan isn't the right person for the job or Sohan isn't qualified to make this decision despite him not having 12 years of sales experience, right? Yeah. You know, I even at Vendo, what I did was I accumulated several case studies. I always had a stack of social proof or a stack of real hard evidence to back everything that I did because I understood coming in younger, coming in as someone who's newer into this field, you're always going to be given a second look and, you know, people might not take you as seriously, you know? So that was like the biggest thing and how you get more autonomy and get to the places you want to be.
How do you present that case? So building the case makes sense. Like you're doing the work, you're finding the things that no one else wants to do, and then you're continuously just building and building that portfolio, I guess, of proof, as you said.
Yep.
First, like how do you present that? Like how do you come to the conversation with your manager or the founder or whatever and say, hey, here's everything I've done. Here's what I want to do. Like what is the way that someone would do that? And then if you're met with like a no, what do you do?
Yeah, so I think part of it needs to happen, and the really good managers are always thinking about your growth before you even started the company. And I think when I interview somewhere now, or I guess in the past, I'd always be like, well, what does growth in this role look like? What is my trajectory? Like if I do X, Y, and Z right, where does that leave me? Like how much money am I making? What's my title? Like what's my scope? Like, you know, for example, on the brand side, if I crush TikTok shop, am I going to expand as a head of social commerce instead of head of TikTok shop to then take on live shopping, to then take on other marketplaces? Can I get a percentage of those? Like, what does success look like down the line? And like, are we aligned on a plan to get there? And like, if we can align on that beforehand, that makes the rules of how to succeed and the case to build very easily. If that doesn't exist and your manager isn't as proactive about that, I think it's very important to come with a lot of data and come with a lot of reasoning on like why they need that. And fundamentally, if you're proving your value and they're not recognizing that over and over again, and they're being dismissive in your conversation, you just need to leave because you have a stack of proof and you can get way more money somewhere else with someone who wants to have you on. Just like you guys were like, oh, you have a stack of proof and sure, like everything you're saying makes sense. Like we can do it here. And I think that opportunity exists for really good talent.
I see. That makes sense. How do you go about, speaking of really good talent, how do you go about identifying really good talent that you want to bring into the company? Now, you know, having a managerial role, like a leadership role in the company. How do you go about identifying really good talent? And then how do you interview them to make sure that they are actually really good before they come into the company?
Of course. Yeah, I think there's two aspects. I think recently, you know, I've been LinkedIn posting a lot about this, right? And I think speaking to the hiring decisions you and I are making around senior roles, like I think for junior roles, it's a lot easier, but it's a lot tougher to survive in the startup culture where everything's ambiguous and fast paced. So you have to screen for that. You have to mirror your environment in their interview process, and you have to test for, have they dealt with those similar environments in their past? You have to put them through a technical exercise where they're simulated in that environment as a proxy to a work trial, right? And the most important thing is, are they compatible with your management style? Are they compatible with the founder personality types? Because that for me made or break like my entire career, you know, at these previous companies. So I usually screen for a combination of those for junior roles, and then curiosity. I think if someone doesn't come to the interview understanding what Reacher does, they haven't done things like look at my LinkedIn, they haven't researched me, they haven't the interviewer, they haven't researched the company. I'm like, okay, when I ask you to go research something, like, how do I know you're going to do it? How do I know you're always trying to improve on yourself, knowing that you're coming in as like someone who we have to invest time into, right? I think that's a big one. So if someone shows up doing their due diligence, really good. And then for senior hires, it becomes a bit nuanced. So we had that head of CS candidate we were interviewing, right? It was my first time ever actually interviewing someone super senior. I think I actually interviewed a VP from Disney in one of our interviews, right? Who had like 20 more years of experience than me. And it's just like, how does someone like me, you know, come to that interview and vet their background and their skill set? Like, that doesn't make sense. And I think what it really comes down to, and I got this advice from my mentor, is just ask a bunch of follow-up questions to see if that person can explain it simply. And what I found is that even some of the most senior talent cannot actually explain how what they're doing moves the needle to like a fifth grader.
Wow.
And if someone doesn't have that level of understanding and expertise in their craft, I don't think they belong at Reacher to scale out the next stage of our company and lead an organization and train other people, because that's a proxy for how they'd explain things to their reports. And then, of course, bare minimum is they have to do their due diligence on me, the company, the role. They have to look at things on a system and visionary basis rather than just tactical. I think if a candidate, let's say for head of CS, isn't asking me like, hey, what does the current CS motion look like? What's the segmentation of your customers? What's your current sales to handoff process? How's onboarding? Are you guys doing event tracking and looking at the stickiness of new customers? Like, you know, what is like the human in the loop designs?
Yeah,
you know, we're looking at like, are you guys using Zapier and automations to plug this in? Like, how's the utilization rate of your CS? Or like, you know what I mean? Like, there are things that people need to ask where it's like you're already thinking like you're in the company and you're already thinking about where our constraints and bottlenecks are, how you get to the next stage of growth. I think those are leading indicators that someone could be a good hire. Again, with senior talent, they like as you know, they're very good at polishing themselves up. They have more experience BSing interviewers than you do interviewing. So you have to have a work trial and see how they do in real life.
Yeah. I think this all aligns with the whole idea of hiring A+ talent, hiring and retaining A+ talent.
Yep.
So Sohan, can you tell me one question that I should have asked you today that I didn't ask you, in your opinion?
I think one thing that I would have loved to dive into, and we still can, is how are you planning on taking Reacher to the next stage and growing the company to $10 million?
Okay. Answer the question. There you go. Ask yourself the question.
All right. What's my current plan on how to grow Reacher? And so I think one thing we've been revisiting and I've been grappling with is, now that I have the autonomy and budget to make really big impact decisions, now that I'm involved with Jerry on the product side and I'm helping with getting the right talent in for design and even interviewing some engineers, you know, like, what are all the levers I can really pull? And, you know, are there different ways to get there faster than just selling and doing more sales-led motions, right? So I think things we've been experimenting with are using more workflow and automation to make everyone in the company more efficient. I think other things we've been experimenting with are community, branding, podcasts, speaking, evangelization. I think having a marketing budget, traveling more, talking more, building real relationships, building a brand beyond sales and looking at growth like that, I think is really the way to do it. And then I think being loud about it and showcasing it in as many places as possible. I think things like that compound from an SEO, from an AEO perspective, how you get found on these generative engines, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm even seeing the impact on hiring. You know, making noise and doing marketing and growth like this brings in top talent. Like, we at Reacher have been experiencing an influx of top TikTok shop talent. And I know this because I also partner with a recruiter who, you know, I've made some referrals to for some of his roles, and he can't even get in contact with these people. But we are attracting them through our content, our branding, and our marketing. And I firmly believe, you know, having a marketing stakeholder and a growth stakeholder at the table, helping give signal for product, helping evangelize the company through marketing and speaking and traveling, I think that's really going to be the way we grow. And then everything tactical, like, it's stuff that I've done before. It's like, hey, which tool set are we going to use? What's our tactic? How do we hire this? I think that's just not as exciting to me, but I think dreaming and figuring out like how marketing can play into role here, like how big of a stage we can get, how many places we can show up. Why can't we do 10x that for a year? And then what happens? I think that's really what I'm starting to look at.
I see. So it sounds like really a lot to focus on product, marketing, and partnerships / relationships with people.
Yes. Yeah.
Product obviously makes sense. I mean, product is almost everything, right?
Yeah.
So product makes sense. From a marketing standpoint, why are you such a big believer in marketing? And any kinds of marketing specifically are you more drawn towards versus certain kinds of marketing?
I'm very drawn to founder and thought leadership and educational led content. I think I'm biased. I think my advantage is being a customer before I join the product side allows me to communicate and sell in a way that some of our competition can't. I think using specific language through organic content, the algorithms on social media will do a lot of the legwork for you. And we've investigated in diving into products where we're already helping amplify creatives with creative agents and ads algorithms. And I think if we follow a lot of those best practices for ourselves, the scale is huge. And with sales, you're limited on talking to just one person at a time.
Yeah, one-on-one.
And, to attract top talent and AEs, you have to pay really big salaries. And I think at our stage right now and where our product's at, we're going to get a salesperson, but is that person going to be the driving force behind millions in revenue on their own? Like probably not, And so, I think that's where marketing comes into play and thought leadership and organic content, being loud on LinkedIn, doing podcasting like this. I think those are the levers that allow you to speak to as many people as possible. And there's a huge educational gap in TikTok shop. You're seeing it yourself, right? Where people are asking for managed service, AI agents. And, all I have to do is just answer questions that people have about TikTok shop. It's so simple.
Yeah.
And if I can just do that in an automated fashion in as many places as possible and put marketing budget behind it and do so much volume that it'd be unreasonable to fail, as Alex Hormozy would say, I don't realize why that can't be the growth strategy that takes Reacher to 10 million.
You said it great. Like the Alex Hormozy playbook, just constantly put out really good quality content that people actually want to listen, that answer a question that's right directly to the point. I mean, totally makes sense. One final question I have, a follow-up question. So from a partnerships, relationship standpoint, this is one thing that I really agree with on top of everything else you said, but it's something that I'm still working on myself. It's like building authentic relationships in person where with people that eventually will be partners, quote unquote, purchase the product, right? They're going to be our customers.
Sure.
But I do actually genuinely want to befriend them and build a relationship with them. It's not just because I want to do it because I can sell them in the end.
Yeah.
There's some days I'm better at that. And some days I'm like, okay, this is I can tell it feels fake. And the energy given is fake. And it's just not converting. From a relationship building standpoint, curious if you have any insights for anybody listening on how to build authentic relationships with people beyond just a monetary exchange or you buy, we give kind of a exchange.
You have to like the people you want to do a partnership with. There's no other way to say it. I mean, two of the biggest partners that I brought in, Julia from me and then Jonathan from Advertise Purple, we actually text on a personal note multiple times a week. And Julia and I will call for 3 to 4 hours whenever we catch up, and we get very we talk about each other's businesses. We talk about what we're doing, and same with Jonathan and I. And there's a real interest where I have a lot to learn from them, and they want to learn some stuff from me. Jonathan probably doesn't have as much to learn about business and leadership, but I help him on the TikTok shop side, right? And I'm very interested in the advice, the perspective, the kinship that we have, right? And I think if you have a network of partners where it's even Catalina, who is ex-Mary Roots, even Christy from Cakes Body, I all met up with these people and talked to them because I was very interested in the perspectives, the opinions, the energies when we had conversations. And there wasn't a point in time where I was I don't feel like responding to this person's text, or, I'm not having a good time leaving this call when I'm talking to them. And I think those sorts of things are a baseline where you're getting value and you actually like talking to the people you want to create partnerships with. Otherwise it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go in and and there were even clients at Pair where I'm just I don't need to form partnerships with them because I don't believe in what they stand for, even though they generate a lot of revenue. And I have my group and I use that for product feedback. They're my connections, they're my allies in my corner, and vice versa. I'm supporting them, no questions asked. They call me up at 12 a.m. being like, I need help with this. Like I'm picking up and I'm helping them. And I think that's the kind of relationship that I would want with my partners.
Relationships and partners with people that you actually get along with and enjoy
like
spending time with.
Like, do you like spending time with your partners? That's really it.
Yeah,
that's how you form good
sense.
partnerships.
I think that's a great place to close it out. Thank you everybody for coming and listening to another episode of Zero Sum Game podcast. Thank you, Sohan, our head of go-to-market, for the amazing session. First time being interviewed by either myself or Jerry. And again, I'm the co-founder of Reacher. My name is Bora. Thank you for listening, and until next time.
And thanks for being an amazing co-host of the podcast.